Welcome to WebEx. Enter your access code or meeting number followed by pound.
That is working.
Your entry 2444777345459 is not valid, or the meeting has not started yet. Re-enter your access code or meeting number followed by pound. If you are the meeting host, enter your PIN followed by a pound.
Just gotta mute everybody.
Yeah.
Hi, everybody.
Good day, good day. We're just about to get started. Okay, we will mute people.
All participants have been muted.
All right, we will start the meeting, Selectmen's meeting of June 1st. The first item will be to review the minutes of May 18th.
I'll second.
Okay, moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye. Very good, thank you. The next item is to review an agreement which has been circulated with the Selectmen concerning the sewer project in the beach area. And Rich Prendergast, who is the chairman of WPCA, is with us this evening to talk about it. Just in a way of introduction, we call this the agreement to join the cost-sharing agreement. And it's essentially the three beaches have been working on within their cost-sharing agreement for some actually years now, and O-Line will be joining that cost-sharing agreement. But before we do, this agreement we're discussing will outline what the town does and the responsibility it has, so that when those responsibilities are fulfilled, we will join the cost-sharing agreement. There will also be a span of time when until we can do that actually from a technical standpoint. So Rich, do you want to maybe bring a chair to the side of the table, and you can maybe use the mic here? And
This one's working.
Is it?
This one.
Okay. And maybe you can just talk about the agreement itself and why we're doing this, and some of the major points, and at the end we can have questions from the Selectmen, but the goal would be that the WPCA has signed this or authorized it to be signed by yourself or your vice chairman, and we would hopefully have a similar resolution so that the Board of Selectmen and the WPCA will sign it, and that would get us rolling. So Rich.
So thank you. I'll give a brief outline of why it's important, what it is. This is a continuation of the sewer plan that was approved by the DEEP that the town developed. It was one of four options. It was the best option from a cost and I think a reliability point of view. This design carries out that plan. This is the design phase. This is the cost-sharing agreement. The agreement to join the cost-sharing agreement is kind of an unusual thing. It's one of the pieces that we need to put in place in order to comply and get clean water funds for the project. What it does is it allows us to pay a small amount of money now, relatively small amount of money, to join in with the private beach associations in the shared infrastructure. That's the pump house and the forced main and I guess one, at least private easements that we all will share because the pipe goes through a number of public and private lands to get to the pump house. This agreement allows us, because the town is further behind in the process than the private beach associations, it allows them to continue on with the design of the pump house without reapplying for their Clean Water Fund application, and it allows us to trigger getting amendments to the intermunicipal agreements for East Lyme and New London, which is another critical thing for us to get in order to get our clean water funds. And with this being signed, we would get those, start the process of getting those intermunicipal agreements amended. And the reason why it's called an agreement to join the cost sharing agreement is once the design part is completed, the pump house design part completed, that we would be able to join the cost sharing agreements during the construction phase. And then we participate in our share of that infrastructure and that application to Clean Water Funds, which is a separate Clean Water Funds application. And that allows us to kind of merge our timeline with the Private Beach Association's timeline, or remain independent, depending on our speed of how we progress.
So, let me just interrupt.
Yes.
We would join after the completion of the shared assets, the collection pipe, the pump station, the force main?
We would have the option to do that. Mm-hmm. It's, personal plan that seems like the smart thing to do is after construction started, before construction is ended, a period of a couple of years, we would join the cost sharing agreement at that point. And the reason is the cost sharing agreement, the construction part, application gets submitted to the state. They need to see everybody who's on it. They understand the timing of this, and that's what they have recommended. Get the application in, and that way, during construction, we have the time so we are ready and everything's set for when the construction is over, and the loan turns from a construction loan to a permanent loan obligation. And we would get our percentage of the cost ownership loan at that time. If we do it before that, we might mess up the Clean Water Fund application. If we wait till after the construction of the plan, we could still do that, but it makes it more challenging to come up with a way to have our own permanent loan obligation. However, there are other alternatives. So it's not like it has to happen. If we delay, we could possibly end up getting financing through the private beach associations for that portion of the thing. They won't be able to charge like an excessive amount because the benefit they're getting, they have to extend to us. So I hope that answers your question. I don't know if there's more to talk about.
Essentially, we have to go to the Board of Finance, he and I, to talk about the funds that we would need to pay upon signing this when the lawyers agree that it's in final form. And then that check is given to Old Colony, who's basically serving as the paymaster at this point. And then we're equal on the expenses so far. And then as we go forward, new expenses will happen, but that'll be paid by Old Colony. We won't be into the cost-sharing agreement, but we'll be under this.
We'll be under this agreement. So just to clarify, and I'm probably splitting hairs, we won't be paying the design and the construction part of the loan because we didn't join the cost-sharing agreement yet. We will be paying this agreement amount, and we'll paying the IMA, amending the IMAs, which is us paying a lawyer to talk to the neighboring towns and say, can you amend this agreement? I don't think it's a lot of money. I mean, $5,000, or less, maybe something like this. You can imagine we have a contract and both lawyers get together and say, amend the contract. And East Lyme's already indicated in the past that they have no problem signing it because it lowers their costs. New London might be a little bit more challenging.
And what do you figure will be the time frame that the attorneys will need to have this in final form?
This is pretty much final form. If you look at it, the draft form that is in right now, the stuff that has been edited are typos and punctuation, capitalization. So the WPCA agrees with this. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them. If you agree with it, I think we send this back to lawyers and say we want the final copy, and it's maybe a week. I mean, although I don't know what the lawyers are doing right now. I mean, I know our lawyer's pretty busy when I talk to him. So
Yeah.
there's not a lot of editing here. It's
final.
the timing of the lawyers, I guess.
So once we give this the approval to go forward and finalize this, then you guys go to the Board of Finance and ask for the money, and then we pay.
Well,
What's the-
let me clarify if I may. We have the money. We have it in the right buckets. We asked, because it's a significant amount of money, we asked the chairman of the Board of Finance, is this okay? He's then said, I don't want you to spend anything, I want you to come talk to us. So we technically could make the payment, but we're asked not to, so we're not going to.
So out of courtesy.
Yeah, and a good
Yeah.
working relationship. We don't want to go back to the days when we had a bad
No, I
working
understand.
relationship.
Yeah, I think the finance director, if it's in things like different accounts with different names, this was not the expected use of those funds. So since those funds do not have to be used for the original purpose intended, they're in carryover and they're in line items, they can be consolidated and devoted to this. And so the money's in the WPCA domain, but just not labeled the way she would like it to be labeled. So if they say, okay, we understand what you're doing, go ahead, then that...
It was in the domain for the project. It's in two categories, consulting and legal. So you can make the argument that a little bit of both of this.
Okay.
So,
Well, I looked it over. I'm not an attorney, but it seemed fine by me, I guess, wording.
it took a long time to get to this point, just saying.
We've had various versions of this for about 4 years, to be honest. And I've been a good doobie, and I've looked at every iteration, and I've been prepared to have conversations about it, but we haven't had a conversation at this board since March. So I do have a couple of questions, but I would start off by saying this is pretty much identical to the March version, which was pretty much similar to the February version. So I would agree that minor things have been changed. It's nice to have a title on it. That was irritating. On page 2 of the May document, May 9th, under costs, it says, the fourth line, design and construction of project and operation and maintenance, minus any costs, etc. This does not include any planning costs, right? It's just, that's already covered somewhere else.
Well, the expenses that we're asked to sign, 1/3 share of it, includes a small percentage of what it costs to design the pump house. That's not really planning costs from Deep's point of view.
Okay, I just want to be that very clear. This is not design costs. Thank you. And then the last sentence, funded by or through a public or private grant or other source which does not require repayment. Can you give me some examples of what that would be?
Funded through public or private grants. I'm not really sure. I mean, so our obligation is for the cost part of it, and part of it comes as a grant. Eligible parts of it for a grant, 25% clean water funds. The other part is 2% financing. If, and this happened like in Branford, a resident donated money. So I haven't heard of anyone willing to donate money to this project, but it happened in Branford. Actually, I think someone donated the whole plant. But I don't know of any other public part, and the private grant could be misconstrued by people saying that they're doing something outside the project and they're getting private financing. But there's no need to get private financing for this. And
well, wouldn't the only grant money be the clean water grant?
There's clean water grant, which is also a small community grant, and there's a solar power part of it, like a renewable energy thing. We submit requests for all grants and see what happens. I don't think we're going to get renewables because we don't have solar panels built into this. I don't know if that answered your question.
Well,
but it did.
Yeah, it's just, I think it's one of those
Kind
of like, yeah, any legal thing. It's like, well, what else could that be? But it doesn't appear that there is anything. No. Let's see. Page 4. Those four where the significant changes were that page from the previous one, and I thought these changes were excellent. More protective of the town. Better written paragraph, so I just wanted to compliment you on that. Page 5, first paragraph.
Before you leave 4, can I just add, at the top of the page, B, in the center it says, the cost described on Exhibit C shall be paid in full by the town upon execution of this agreement. I just wanted to stress that we are not signing this today or anything because we need to go to the Board of Finance, as previously mentioned. So we will have a financial presentation for them, and if they approve it, then that would be another step in getting this thing approved to be signed.
Okay, understood, but I think it's inappropriate for us to go to the Board of Finance without weighing in on whether we think the costs delineated in here have our support.
Well, I can say this, that 2 members of the WPCA examined all the bills that were a part of those expenses, and I think they both came back saying they found them to be fine.
That is correct. The treasurer, Doug Wilkinson, and Steve Tsunami, who is kind of in this business, in civil construction. So they looked at the bills and they said, I guess it looked good. from a WPCA point of view, that was the key for us to go through our committee, and we did a motion that was, I'll paraphrase for now, it's saying that we agree to sign if you agree to sign. Mm-hmm. The selectmen's office.
And I'm just saying, I agree we have to go to the Board of Finance. I think it's appropriate, but I don't think we should go to the Board of Finance unless this board approves the costs.
Yeah, we would make, if we make a motion, it would be subject to the Board of Finance approval. And we would recommend it to them.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. The next page, page 5, it's the first paragraph. I think this goes to your discussion on which agreement comes first and then which comes second. Is there any doubt in your mind or any reason that the joint interim funding obligation for construction would not be signed in any way? Is there any way that would go forward in which that would jeopardize our funding under this agreement?
Do you mean, it says joint interim funding obligations, do you mean intermunicipal agreements, or do you mean actually joint interim funding?
Well, I actually mean the one for construction, because we commit to this version, which allows you to go forward with intermittent, and I'm assuming that you already said East Lyme is going to be okay, and London may need a little help. I'm actually talking about the next obligation, which is the one for construction. Would there be any concern that that would not be signed by the beach association?
I do not think so. This agreement basically says that we're joining them, and it's an agreement to join them. But here's another motivating factor. They would have to raise the cost to the residents if we don't do it. So they're financially motivated, and their costs, as I understand it right now, are set to include us. This is the same reason why East Lyme likes to do it, because it lowers their cost. They don't have to go buy new equipment. They just get more money.
The reason why I think it's important that we have that discussion here is because if there was any reason that you could see where the private beach associations would decide not to go forward with construction, that would put our 70 grand associated with this document in jeopardy.
That is correct. That is an actual risk.
Right. And I think the Board of Finance needs to really understand that. So certainly we need to feel good to recommend it to them that we feel that this payment under this obligation will be further enhanced by the obligation for construction, the next phase being signed.
I don't know, maybe there's an argument you could say that if they don't let us sign, then they have to return these funds. But because this agreement says that they're agreeing to sign us with the cost sharing agreement.
Could we run that by the attorney if we're done, just to make sure that there is an help if that happens?
It doesn't say in there right now.
No.
Because, but yeah, we could check that.
Just I would think he'd sleep a little bit more comfortably. Thank you. That's all I noticed that was different. Substantial need for discussion. So thank you.
And that might apply to 4.2 as well, terminating and withdrawing. Under B, it says, following the expiration of the initial term by the withdrawal of any party for any reason upon 180 days prior written notice. That, I don't know if it was terminated by a withdrawing partner, the remaining partners would be stuck, so maybe that would unwind it too. Any other questions for Rich?
I do not.
Well, if selectmen are of a mind, it might suggest a motion to the effect that the board would authorize the first selectman to execute this upon recommendation by the town attorney and resolving the issue Mary Jo brought up about if something were not signed in the future that would cause things to fall apart.
I'll make a motion for that. I can't reiterate what you just said.
Yeah, we can clean it up, yeah.
Second.
I'm moving second. Other discussion?
Yes. I am uncomfortable having the biggest project this town has ever undertaken without seeing the final document. That doesn't make sense to me because I've never done that before. I think we could have a special meeting once you get the final version.
Yeah, we can certainly have it reviewed one more time Yeah, because it's still coming together, and I think having town attorney working on our behalf is a great comfort. So
Yes.
we can certainly share the final version.
If I might say something, we thought there might be some changes. So the idea was, if you had any concerns, this would be the place, and we make edits. So that's an explanation, not justification, why there's some edits on it. We got to the point where we thought it was final, but just to point that out. But
So you're thinking about a week before the final version might be completed?
well, if there's no edits, I can ask them to finalize it and we'll send something ready to sign. And then you get a clean copy with no changes. But we thought maybe there might be some concerns or changes, or I have no idea what you would focus on. And the fact that it took us years to get to this point, I thought it'd be presumptuous to bring you a do not change copy. That's all. So.
Okay, well, it would just be the final version, and unless somebody sees something alarming, I can't imagine it wouldn't conform to our best interest. Well, we can have the attorney let us know. They might have to check once more with the other side just to be sure and finalize it.
So we'll probably vote it on next meeting then. We'll probably vote on it next meeting because
Yeah, if it's ready sooner, we could review it and just a single purpose thing to look at it, because we're getting to the point where we're trying to close doors and get this moving. We've got a few other things to go, such as the easements, and those are going along well, but we have to get the process squared away for that. But that looks very promising. So once we have all these things ready to go, then we'll be locked in. Yeah. All right. Well, we thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, next is a letter from Michael Ferguson, who is an investor in 176 Boston Post Road. And we also have a letter from Gregory Hack and from Bob Dunn. And due to the length of the Ferguson letter, I think maybe you want to pull that door, they're going to be rolling. Yeah, thank you. The letter was following a meeting which occurred at the property, 176 Boston Post Road. A group of 6 individuals purchased this piece of real estate. It's a C30 zone, commercial zone, and it's a relatively small house on I think it's not 30,000 square feet, I think it's about 10,000 square foot lot, so it's small, but it's 2 properties away from the east end of the park, and the investors bought it with the hope that they could have a facility there in which they could store their rowing shells, and rather than put them on their cars to come to the park and do their rowing, they could be stored in this facility. And so we heard about it, at least I met with Dr. Hack probably in February, and so they were going to start the process of talking to the land use and seeing what could be done. And the Park and Rec Commission has some feelings about it in terms of the activity that would be there, the number of boats, the transport of the boats from the facility to the dock, And so it's been kind of a push and pull type of thing, and we had a meeting there on the property, I think it was mid-May, and there was some representatives from the Park and Rec Commission and two of the owners of the property, and an adjacent neighbor actually joined the group, asked if he could join, and he was welcome to join. It was really an effort to try to see if there could be some common ground worked out whereby this facility could move forward and become, I guess you'd consider it a clubhouse basically, but I think the land use people have called it a marine facility. So I think there was a gap between what the Park and Rec Commission wanted and what the investors wanted, and so the thought was what could be done to try to come to some accord where it would work out. I think the point of view of the investors in the property, they thought if they could take their boats from this place to the dock in a very early morning and be gone by 9 o'clock, that would not interfere with the summer bathing, the park, the nature of the park visitors going to the beach and so forth. And then they might come back in the later afternoon. I think the Park and Rec thought that if this grew beyond just 6 individuals owning a facility and taking their boats, not all individuals at the same time necessarily, it would be not much in the way of traffic. But then as it went to ZBA, I think it was termed a marine facility because they might actually have other people involved leasing space in the boat storage area for their own boats, and not sure how many actual people might be involved, but it would be more than 6 and perhaps up to 24 boats. I think the commission was concerned that the size of the storage structure at the back of the building, it had to be big enough to accommodate boats up to 31 feet. I guess the individual rowing shells are 24 feet and the doubles are 31 feet. So that size building would go fairly close to the property line, maybe 20, 25 feet. So it would allow the boats to come out of storage, but they'd be right close to the border, and not sure how they would work parking and so forth if there were more individuals. So there were, I think Park and Rec enacted some rules regulating the size of boats to be brought into the park. I guess there are something between 20 and 25 parking spaces within the park. And so in the morning, if the rowers use the parking spaces, it should not unduly interfere with the public coming to use the beach if they were out of there by 9 o'clock. There was some concern that the length of the boats being transported and on the cars and so forth, they're rather large, and again, if they were done at a certain time of day, maybe that's okay. If they were other times, that might be more of a hazard. So the meeting ensued, and there was some discussion, and I think there was definitely some polar points of view, and I had to leave before the meeting concluded, and I don't think they came out of the meeting saying, okay, we think we can make our operation work more closely with what Park and Rec would like, and Park and Rec didn't come up with how they might allow this facility to exist. coexist. It was interesting because the neighbor who lives on the water, he was actually outside of the 100-foot area where they would have to notify neighbors of what was going on about this building, and he said that being a resident for a number of years, why it's definitely you can hear the voices in the boats when they get going in the morning at 6:30. So it's good to be an early riser. And he had not really heard about this facility, the plan, and so he was happy to hear firsthand what was going to happen if they went through all the approvals. As I understand it, the owners went to the Zoning Board of Appeals and received a conditional approval. I think it was subject to having a special permit from zoning. And as I understand it, that special permit has not been pursued yet. So that would need to be done in order to do what they want to do. And so that answer is not yet known. I can imagine that there's frustration on both sides as to the viewpoints of each, and I'm hoping that we can have further discussion, and perhaps the rowing 176 Boston Post Road folks could come up with trying to have, stick to maybe the original plan of the investors and their boats, as opposed to welcoming a bunch of other folks who would rent space in the storage facility, and then maybe Park and Rec could figure out how the boats might move through the park at certain hours when it would likely not be a nuisance to the people using the park for swimming and the like. I think we have to bear in mind that, about a third of the park is dedicated to the boathouse, and so I think Park and Rec is sensitive that they want to make sure the rest of the park stays for family use, and if it can coexist with the rowing activity with an adjacent property. I think they're concerned too about if the coverage of the land is reduced a lot by the storage building, then the residents, they would have to, if they want to work on their boats, where would they do that? Would they have enough room alongside this structure, or would they want to go out onto the town property? Because I think, as it's stated, if it's a commercial use, essentially in the zoning idea, then they don't want to have where a commercial enterprise is using a town park for its benefit. So there are a number of things to be worked out, and it did not get worked out at that meeting. So I think both Mr. Ferguson and Dr. Hack sent letters expressing their viewpoints and recommendations, and I think Mr. Dunn expressed his reaction, and so I think we have to continue to try to get these two groups together to see if something can be worked out that'll be satisfactory, because it's not healthy to have this situation festering. And I would also really like to see what the zoning opinion is about this. If it's totally okay with land use to do what they want to do, that would be helpful to know. If for some reason zoning would not give it approval, that would be another situation. So I know the Park and Rec is having a meeting Thursday, And they will be, I'm sure this matter will come up, but I think we want to follow this closely because it's unfortunate to have this sort of adversarial relationship going on at this point, and so I'm hoping maybe another meeting or two we could get some progress and some common thinking here. So that's my impression as to how the meeting transpired and a summary of these letters. I don't know if anybody else has comments.
I do. I wasn't sure we're in the meeting we were going to have this discussion, so I thank you for summarizing this, Tim. And I appreciate that you attended this meeting and attempted to find some, well, at least listen to the various perspectives. And you made some interesting comments right now. You noted that it was a commercial zone property. And you also noted some things that I was wondering about is the land use issues versus the, first of all, my understanding is there has been no application to zoning by this group for their facility. But I also know that this group worked very, very closely with our land use officials before they went to ZBA and looking at our regulations to determine how they should apply. So the marine facility option was really an option that the town's land use officials helped this group work through. And I think we have to acknowledge that fact, that town officials felt this was correct under the regulations. I agree that we have to get this resolved. The backdrop of what's going on, the greatest civil unrest this nation has seen in decades, to have something like this not be solvable makes no sense to me. We did receive several letters of concern regarding the recent rules placed on the Dean's Park by Park and Rec. We've had public comment on these issues also. These letters and voices do outline reasonable ways to move forward together in a cooperative and respectful way. The Board of Selectmen needs to facilitate a fair resolution of these concerns through due process, and I think you stated that, Tim, really. This requires meetings, obtaining data, open-mindedness, and leadership that recognizes what's best for our town. I'm going to ask that the Board of Selectmen consider and hopefully approve a motion that I'd like to make, so that in the interest of cooperation and resetting where we were before things got to where they are, so that collaborative discussions can occur and that people can feel comfortable using the park without fear, that the Board of Selectmen, my motion is that the Board of Selectmen indicates that they do not support the new Hayes Park rules established by the Park and Rec Commission at their April 15th, 2020 meeting, but request the Park and Rec Commission immediately meet to rescind them. And further, that the Park and Rec Commission begin collaborative meetings regarding Hayes Park with appropriate town officials, school officials, public safety, and district community stakeholders to establish rules and policies for Hayes Park. I do think, I will add that there's some precedent to this in that we worked for a long time under a sound youth committee that informed us, formed the Board of Selectmen of needs down there. And I kind of see this situation as being similar.
I might add that I think the town officials that provided the advice, they were not town officials. We engaged people from the regional planning agency to fill in when we had no zoning
One of
official.
them was Dan, who is our current official. One of them was Dan, our current official.
Right. But I don't know that they collectively had the knowledge that might have, I don't know, that's just what I heard. So I don't know, it wasn't like our own zoning enforcement officer, so I don't know that we could characterize the hired temporary people as town officials, but they were acting in place of our town officials. So hopefully the advice that they were giving was, it's a unique situation, and so hopefully the advice was good. But I don't know if they are going to pursue the zoning special permit or not. I didn't ask that question yet, but that would certainly clarify if whatever they wish to do, if zoning says it, and if I guess the ZBA the condition of approval was to get the zoning approval, and so if they followed and got the zoning approval, then they'd be, I guess, pretty well set for whatever they wish to do. So I'm not sure whether that step is going to happen soon or just what. So, but I think we could encourage more discussion. I know that the 176 investors and others have said some of the rules were enacted fairly recently and so forth. So I think this all could be looked at in terms of the big picture. And the time of operation seems important. If things could be done prior to 9 o'clock, and if that's, I don't know when the crowd was otherwise a riot. I think our beaches, we've been saying during this interim period that the beaches are open at 9. So if that, I'm not sure when they open. Prior, I don't really even know if they opened at 8:30 or other places. But if 9 is when the beaches open, then if they're out by 9, that shouldn't be a problem. I guess one would have to understand, this noise thing was new to me. If the gentleman who lives on the water said, boy, there's a good bit of racket when they get going in the morning, I'm not sure if it's 1 or 2 people, 3 people leaving the subject building and going, it probably wouldn't be much. But you wouldn't want to increase the noise level if there was a lot of preparation and noise at this place, and then they'd go over to the dock. So you have to be sensitive to the neighborhood there. So I think we should have their interest in mind as well. But it would seem that if you could get the time frames mutually agreeable and iron out some of the little technical things, this should work. I don't see why it couldn't have. And I think we all need to be sensitive that this should be very well described, because I think people feel that the park has a lot of rowing focus, and they're protective of that part of the park. They don't want to see it where people come to go to the beach and there's some event having to do with rowing and all the parking's taken up. So I think there'd have to be some very definite rules that once it's time for the locals to come to the beach and play basketball or whatever else in the park, but that's still a very important function and shouldn't be made on a subservient basis.
Well, I don't disagree with most of what you said, but these letters we've received, the discussions we've had, these are reasonable people that we're dealing with, and I think that they can come to reasonable working relationships. For example, with the regattas, again, with the school, they have people park at Town Woods, so it seems that when there's been issues, they work through them. They work with Park and Rec. I think these people come to the table like adults and work through issues like adults, which is what we really would expect in a small town, right?
Mm-hmm.
But in the meantime, Park and Rec has these rules that affect how people use the park, and there was really not any due process for these rules to be instituted, in my opinion. And that's why I think that this Board of Selectmen needs to discuss the rules, reset this, so that at least there's a playing field that existed before their April meeting from which they can all sit down and come to some accord on the use of the park.
Now, which, I know the 15-foot vessel on top of the car was a rule. What other rule is there?
There was a series of rules. I don't have the minutes in front of me. But that was a big one about coming in, topping a boat.
Mm-hmm.
That was an issue.
Yeah.
There doesn't seem to be a lot of data to support that that's been an issue, and to have it instituted without due process
Okay.
is a concern, right?
I'm just trying to see, when I hear the word rules, it sounds like more than one rule. So
There were rules that they instituted at their April 15th meeting.